Hello everyone and welcome to the Deep Stone Crypt Raid. Within this raid there are 4 main encounters, an opening encounter and a jumping puzzle, and the recommended power is set at 1220 with the final boss being 1250. I will be your guide, taking you through each encounter and showing you how to get both raid chests, but if you're looking for the raid collectibles or other triumphs, I won't be covering those in this video. There's a playlist with those other guides in the description if you'd like to use them. Just a reminder that timestamps are in the description for each section of the raid, and with all of that out of the way, let's get right into it. The opening to the raid offers each of your fireteam members a pike, although your sparrow is also an option, that you'll use to navigate through this wasteland to find heat bubbles. The goal is to get from bubble to bubble so that you can stay out of the freezing cold and avoid getting frostbite, which is a debuff that if it reaches times 10 will kill you. Getting into the bubble gives you shelter from the storm, which quickly removes these stacks of frostbite. Captains and other fallen will attack you at each bubble, and when you reach the final one, they'll send fallen brigs. This is not a darkness zone, so players can freely self-res throughout. This encounter is pretty similar to the lamp encounter in Crota's End, except unlike the lamps, you can remain at each bubble for as long as you please without penalty. The course itself is pretty straightforward, you just look for lights sticking out of the ground to find your way to the next heat bubble. Just use the footage in this video and follow where I'm going if you get lost. At the very end of this Pike section, there is a secret chest you can get by taking a right before entering the exit doorway. Quickly climb up the rocks and open the chest at the top before the frostbite kills you. This chest can actually be gotten completely solo, but like the Garden of Salvation chests, they will only reward you with raid drops that you've already earned, and of course they are once per week per character. They do drop the new Deep Stone Crypt Raid mods as well, and the raid currency Spoils of Conquest, which can be used at the end of the raid, or to buy old raid exotics from the exotic archive in the tower. Crypt Security is the first real encounter of this raid. Here there are overload captains, so I would advise bringing something to stagger them, as they're really the only big threat here. The goal of the first encounter is to lower the shields protecting the giant fuses in the middle of the area and destroy them in a specific order. These fuses are the 3 big tubes on either side of the dividing wall between the light and dark rooms, so 6 in total that you have to destroy. In order to get to damaging these fuses, you'll need an operator and a scanner, which are 2 augments or roles that your team needs to master. The red operator augment allows you to shoot things that other people cannot, and the yellow scanner augment allows you to see things that other people cannot. These augments can be passed to other teammates by using what is called an augment station. When an augment is put into a station, it can be taken out from any other station in the encounter. But once an augment is deposited, you can't insert another one until that one is taken out first. The way this first encounter works is in the underground section of this area there are 10 panels that look like this. And these panels can only be shot by a player with the operator augment. Above ground are windows that let you see into the underground area. The player with the scanner augment can look through the windows in the floor and will be able to see which panels are glowing yellow, which the operator then needs to shoot. There are 10 underground panels in total, but only 4 will be active at a time. 2 underneath the light side and 2 underneath the dark side. If the operator shoots all 4 quick enough, this will begin the damage phase, which we'll cover in a little bit. To begin, you'll want to split up so that there are 2 players responsible for killing enemies on both light and dark sides. Then assign 1 player as the operator and another as the initial scanner. While the operator can pick their augment up from one of the initial stations, the scanner will need to get their augment from killing a vandal that's carrying it. Once the scanner gets their augment, they'll start looking through the floor and finding the 2 glowing panels on their side. If the doors are locked between the sides, the scanner should pass their augment to the opposite side using an augment station, so that someone else can take over the role. If you are unable to deposit your augment to pass it to the other side, it is because servitors have spawned. You should always defeat the servitors as soon as they spawn to make sure the stations remain active. As for what callouts to use to communicate which panels the operator should shoot, our team originally numbered the panels 1 through 10 clockwise around the room, but it would be much easier to split them up into left 1 through 5 and right 1 through 5. This map from Raid Secrets is of the underground section and is oriented as if you were the operator walking down the stairs heading into the basement. Whoever is your operator and your scanner should get familiar with the locations of each panel and how it looks from through the windows before you begin. What I would highly recommend is having your operator wait until the panels are found before opening the downstairs section, because if you spend too long underground without beginning the damage phase, the entire room gets set on fire and you'll die. Using the 1 to 10 callout method, our team would wait until all 4 panels were found before sending the operator downstairs to shoot them. When all 4 glowing panels have been shot, the damage phase will begin. At this point, the operator should deposit their augment into the station underground so that a player from above can grab it. Then the scanner from above sends their augment downstairs for the underground player to grab. The player underground will need this scanner augment in order to see which fuses their team should be damaging. On the central pillar underground, there will be 3 fuses on the right and 3 fuses on the left, corresponding to the big ones upstairs. The scanner underground should watch both sides to find the one that's glowing yellow, and communicate this to the team above. If the glowing fuse is on the right side, remember that's light, and if it's on the left side, remember that's dark. The easiest way to call out which fuse is glowing is to just say left, middle, or right on either light side or dark side. So if the player downstairs sees the middle fuse glowing yellow and it's on the right side, they would say light middle. This would tell the players upstairs that they should only damage the middle fuse in the light side of the room. The scanner that's downstairs should be moving quickly back and forth, checking both sides of the pillar after each fuse is destroyed, because it's common for the glowing fuse to go back and forth from side to side, even though the order is always randomized. The easiest way to complete this in a single phase is by having 2 players from the damage team cover one group of fuses, while the remaining 3 players on the damage team covers the other group. This will minimize the amount of running back and forth the damage team has to do. The best weapons for the damage phase here are Xenophage, 1000 Voices, heavy grenade launchers, shotguns, basically anything with very high burst damage. On day 1, we also used Heir Apparent, but that might be too slow for a 1 phase now. If you don't destroy all of the fuses by the end of the damage phase, the underground player should send the scanner back up while someone sends the operator back down, allowing you to have the same operator shoot the panels again. You can also choose to send a new operator downstairs instead. If you're sending a new operator downstairs, they must fully enter into the underground section and have the door close before the other player can exit by standing in close proximity to the above ground doors. Once you are back to having 1 scanner upstairs and 1 operator downstairs, you'll just repeat all the previous steps until you get to damage phase again, and hopefully it won't take you more than 2 phases. To summarize the entire encounter very quickly, have 1 player get the operator from the station while 1 player gets scanner from a vandal. The scanner should look through the floor and call out the 4 panels, 2 on each side that the operator needs to shoot. If the doors are closed, they should pass the scanner buff to the other side of the room via the station. The operator then goes down and shoots the 4 panels beginning the damage phase, and passes their operator augment upstairs so that they can get the scanner augment downstairs. And finally, the underground player will use the scanner augment to call out which fuses to damage. That was the first encounter. Now let's move on to encounter 2. The second encounter is against Atrax 1 Fallen Exo. Both the operator and scanner buffs will still be present, and they'll be used to achieve the goal of this encounter, which is to identify the Atrax replicant that is the real one, damage it as much as you can, and then eject the orb it leaves behind into space. The more damage you do to a replicant, the faster you'll eat away at Atrax's health, and the sooner you'll reach his final stand. The best weapon to use for this encounter is easily the new exotic sword, the Lament. Your next best bet is Fallen Guillotine, and then the other swords with Relentless and Whirlwind, Fourth Horseman, which can be paired with a legendary sword, Xenophage, and if you have none of those, try and find a weapon that can do a lot of damage in a short amount of time, similar to the first encounter. It helps to use a Ward of Dawn bubble and a Well of Radiance for damage buffs, or things like Nova Bomb because they're extremely quick to cast, allowing you to swap to your sword and still do a ton of damage. You can also use things like Tether and Shoulder Charge. Basically just do whatever you have to deal the most possible damage to each replicant. During day 1 we also used Witherhoard to help clear the ads and the servitors, and for some additional damage on the replicants. But I would recommend using the Lament above anything else if you have it. This encounter is split into 2 sections, an upper level which our team refers to as space, and the lower level which we referred to as ground. You will need to split into 2 teams, 3 players for each area. Each team will need a designated scanner, and the space team needs a designated operator. You can begin this encounter in one of 2 ways. The first is by sending space team to take the pods and head to space immediately. In each area there will be 3 servitors that spawn in the left, middle, and right sides of the room. Defeating all of the servitors will allow Extinction Protocol, also known as the wipe mechanic, to begin shortly after, so make sure everyone is ready before you kill all the servitors. While the servitors are spawning, a scanner vandal will spawn in space team's area, and an operator vandal will spawn in ground team's area. Ground team should pick up the operator augment and deposit it into an augment station to send it up to space team, while space team picks up the scanner augment and prepares for Extinction Protocol. The other way to do this is by having space team stay with ground team until they get the operator augment, and then the operator and his teammates can head up to space, negating the need to pass the augment. Having the operator start with the augment means you don't have to remember to pick it up from a station later. However, this may make the encounter start a little bit slower. When the operator and their team get to space, the operator should also send the pods back down to ground team by shooting the glowing red panels next to the pods. The scanner in this encounter is used to identify the correct Atrax replicant that your group should damage, and there are 4 replicants on both the upper and lower levels of this encounter. We found it easiest to call them out by their positions in the room, although oftentimes the callouts would be reduced to "on me" if you end up right next to the correct one. The order of the Extinction Protocol starts with Space Team, then goes to Ground Team, then back to Space Team, and then back to Ground Team again, which means 4 replicants in total need to be defeated. This also means each team needs the scanner augment twice per phase. Atrax's replicants will begin the wipe mechanic in space first, and when this happens, the scanner should find the replicant that is glowing yellow so that your team can damage it. The amount of damage you do to a replicant is how much damage you'll do to Atrax's health bar at the bottom of your screen. This means that you want to make sure everyone on your team is ready to damage the replicant at the same time, so that everyone can add their damage before the replicant disappears after a few seconds. And the more damage you do to each replicant, the faster the encounter will be over. If your team member won't be able to make it in time, you should begin damaging it without them, because if you wait too long, you'll all wipe. When a replicant is defeated, 2 things should happen. Number 1, the scanner should immediately deposit their scanner augment into a station, sending it to the other team. This is very important because the other team doesn't have long before they need to prevent Atrax's wipe mechanic. And number 2, a defeated replicant will drop a Replicant Orb on the ground, which you should pick up immediately, otherwise a new replicant will spawn in its place and wipe everyone. Picking up this orb gives you a debuff that lasts 40 seconds before you die. The operator can shoot the orb that is floating over your head, and it will drop on the ground, allowing you or anyone else to pick it up, refreshing the timer. When ground team picks up an orb, they should jump in a pod and head to space immediately. These replicant orbs should be ejected into an airlock, of which there are several around the space area. In order to eject an orb, the operator needs to open an airlock by shooting one of the airlock panels that is glowing red. Every player with a replicant orb should enter this airlock, and the operator can then shoot the orbs over their head, which should eject them when the player leaves the airlock. Just make sure that you don't accidentally pick up the orbs when you're running back out. Because you need to defeat 4 total replicants per phase, you will have to eject a total of 4 replicant orbs per phase. You can eject as many orbs at once as you'd like, or just do them one at a time. That part is up to you. The way our team likes to execute this is by waiting until we have 3 players with an orb before we eject them. Space Team gets an orb first, sends the scanner back down to Ground Team. Then a member from Ground Team gets an orb and they send the scanner back up, and the member with the orb comes up to Space. Then Space Team gets the 3rd orb, sends the scanner back down to the Ground Team, and the 3 players with an orb head into an airlock. This will leave 2 players on the Ground Team for the final replicant, and when one of them gets the final orb and heads to space, they can be ejected alone. The only tricky part about waiting until you have 3 orbs to eject them is that you'll have to juggle the orbs by constantly refreshing the debuffs every 20 to 30 seconds. It's helpful to have your teammates who are carrying an orb call out when they're getting low on the timer. Just remember to pass the scanner augment to the other team every time a replicant is killed. Once your team reaches the notch in Atrax's health bar, he will enter Final Stand, and every player from the Ground Team should take a pod up to space immediately. Whoever is the scanner at this point will have the job of calling out which of Atrax's replicants is glowing yellow, so that the entire team can deal damage to it. During this Final Stand in space, there will be way more replicants than usual, so the scanner needs to be ready to call out or sprint towards the correct one. If you don't delete the health bar and end the encounter right away, the scanner needs to be ready to call out the next replicant pretty much immediately. The scanner will continue calling out the glowing replicants until the health bar is gone. If at any point during this encounter the operator accidentally picks up a replicant orb, they should deposit their operator augment into a station so someone else can pick it up and shoot the orb off their head. This is because the operator cannot shoot an orb off their own head. Then they can pass the operator augment back to the original person if they wish. To quickly summarize this encounter, first, Space Team takes the pod up to space and Ground Team secures the operator augment and passes it to Space Team once all the servitors are dead. Alternatively, Space Team stays down with the Ground Team to clear enemies and retrieves the operator augment themselves and then goes to space. Then Space Team clears their servitors and picks up the scanner augment and uses it to find the glowing yellow replicant, defeats it with as much damage as possible, and then sends the scanner down to Ground Team. The scanner should then be passed back after Ground Team defeats their replicant, and so on. Meanwhile, the operator periodically refreshes the debuff by shooting the orb on whoever picks it up. Players from Ground Team with an orb should head to Space Team and prepare to go into an airlock. After an operator ejects a total of 4 orbs, everyone prepares to kill servitors again. When the notch in Atrax's health bar is reached, everyone heads to space and prepares for Final Stand, where the scanner must identify the correct replicant one at a time. That is the second encounter. Now let's move on to the jumping puzzle and encounter 3. The Descent is the next area you'll travel through after beating Atrax 1. This area is an incredibly gorgeous jumping puzzle in space, and it has such a beautiful soundtrack to it. The second chest can be found by taking the leftmost path to the next encounter, and it's pretty much impossible to miss if you follow the path that I take in this video.
Artificial intelligence activated. Enjoying yourselves, intruders? It's worth knowing the cataclysmic damage you will be responsible for today. Do not fool yourselves. This facility is not simply the fruitless work of some pathetic scientist. This house was built by the genius Clovis Bray I himself. Within lies humanity's salvation. La Fontaine du Jouvence. Made possible by Clarity Control. Magnificent, wasn't it? An entity from beyond our own dimension. And the answer to humanity's eternal struggle. Mortality. Were it to fall into the wrong hands, humanity and the universe would be utterly doomed. I have no reason to believe you are anything godlike judgment. May it extend eternally.
The third encounter in the Deep Stone Crypt Raid is Taniks Reborn. This encounter is my personal favorite, and as chaotic as it is, there's plenty of opportunities to recover from accidents here. This encounter continues to utilize the operator and scanner augments, but also introduces a third augment called Suppressor, which we'll get to in a little bit. Your loadout for this encounter should be anything that is great at controlling large groups of enemies. This encounter space is pretty small, and a good chunk of the action takes place near the middle of the room. The overload captains return here, so if your power level is a bit on the lower side, it can be helpful to bring something to stun them. However, they are pretty easy to delete with a sword once you're high enough. The nice thing about this encounter is you can really use anything because there is no boss that you have to damage. All three augments drop from vandals just like in previous encounters. The operator's job here is to release the nuke cores by shooting a glowing red panel when the nukes begin charging or when you hear this sound. The nuke cores can spawn on the far left and far right walls, and also on top of the left and right catwalks, and the glowing red panels will be right next to where the nukes spawn. When the operator shoots a red panel, two nuke cores will spawn, and so two players will need to quickly get to them and pick them up before they detonate in 10 seconds. The cores themselves need to be deposited into specific chests in the middle of the room, and the scanner is responsible for communicating which two chests those are. Multiple red panels will light up in this encounter, and as the operator, shooting any one of them will release the nukes. But I would recommend that you shoot the one furthest from your teammate, as it doesn't seem like the nuke cores spawn near the panels that you have shot. The scanner's job, like I mentioned earlier, is to call out the correct chest to dunk the cores into, which will be glowing yellow. Our team numbered the chests like this. 1 and 2 is the top row, 3 and 4 is the bottom row, left to right. You could also just call the chests out by their position or assign whatever callout you'd like to them. It's whatever is easiest for your team. In order to insert the cores into these chests, Taniks must be stunned by the suppressor. Around the room are 3 floating drones, one on the upper left platform, one on the upper right, and one in the middle of the room. When the nuke cores spawn, each of these drones will turn blue and a circle will spawn beneath them. The player with the suppressor augment needs to stand in this circle and look for Taniks. When Taniks is glowing blue, they need to shoot him until he is no longer glowing blue. It doesn't take much to do this, literally just a bullet or two. The suppressor will need to do this in each of the 3 drone circles and do it quickly to complete the stun on Taniks and allow their teammates to insert the cores into the correct chests. When you pick up a core, you'll begin getting stacks of the radiation debuff, and reaching 10 stacks will kill you. This means you might have to trade off the cores with another player, by having them walk up to you and hold down the interact button to take the core from you. When you're no longer carrying a core, you will slowly begin losing those stacks of radiation. After the suppressor completes their stun on Taniks by shooting him from under each drone, and the nukes are deposited, a random augment will deactivate. If you have one of these augments, you will need to go deposit it into one of the augment stations around the room so that someone else can take over that role. Once your augment has been deactivated, you cannot pick up another augment for 45 seconds. This phase of releasing the nukes, suppressing Taniks, and dumping the nukes into the chests will need to be repeated 6 times in total. And after the final time, a hatch will open up in the middle of the room, and your entire team should drop down it, run to the very end of the corridor, and escape Taniks. To quickly summarize this encounter, 3 players should pick up the operator, scanner, and suppressor augments from vandals. When the nukes begin charging, the operator should shoot one of the glowing red panels above or near the nuke spawns to release said nukes. 2 players should immediately grab each nuke and head towards the middle of the room. Meanwhile, the suppressor shoots Taniks from each of the drone locations, unlocking the chests, which allows the players carrying the nukes to deposit them in the correct chests that the scanner calls out. After all of the above events happen, a random augment will be deactivated, and the player with the deactivated augment should deposit it into a station for someone else to take for the next phase. Repeat that for a total of 6 times, and then escape through the open hatch in the middle of the room. That was Encounter 3, and now, last but not least, we head to the final boss. In the fourth and final encounter of the raid, you will be fighting against Taniks, because for some reason this dude just won't stay dead. Take what you learned from the last encounter with the 3 augment rolls and apply it to this one. Both the suppressor and scanner functions stay the exact same, and the only change will be the operator, which will be shooting giant purple bubbles instead of red panels. Because this is an actual boss encounter, you should come prepared with a few things ready to deal a lot of damage. Probably the best loadout currently for this fight is Anarchy, along with 2 slug shotguns. Slug shotguns are incredibly good right now, but you'll need a warlock wearing Lunafaction boots in order to get the most out of them. Because without Lunafaction boots, you will not be getting the extra range, and thus will not be taking full advantage of the slug's damage. Some great shotguns to use here are the First In, Last Out, which can roll with Vorpal Weapon and Auto-Loading Holster, Bone Chiller, which is the new Europa shotgun, the new Raid Shotgun Heritage, and Chaperone. But if you don't have any of these or aren't going to be running Lunafactions, legendary snipers that have 4 times the charm and rapid hit, or triple tap and rapid hit are another decent option. Some good snipers to use here include Supremacy, the Ikelos Sniper, Long Shadow, the new Raid Sniper Succession, and Adored. If you're confident enough, I would even recommend running double special weapons, either 2 slug shotguns, a shotgun and a sniper, 2 snipers, etc. Now running double special can be a bit dicey if you are a lower power level, so if you find that you're unable to properly defend yourself, then you might have to sacrifice some damage in order to actually make it to the damage phase alive. Most of the enemies here are easy to deal with the exception of the regular fallen captains, which you should watch out for. I say regular as in the non-overload versions. If you don't have Anarchy, you can also use things like Izanagi's Burden and a grenade launcher with spike nades, or Xenophage, but the one thing that I would say is a must is definitely Divinity. You should have one person running Divinity for this boss because it makes everyone's life so much easier when trying to deal damage with your shotguns and snipers. Applying Divinity will spawn the cage beneath Taniks, making it pretty easy to get those precision shots in. The Divinity person can also run a heavy weapon like Falling Guillotine, or a machine gun to help with captains. Now the goal of this encounter is similar to the last, where you'll need to suppress Taniks in order to dunk nukes into the chests, and after 4 nukes have been delivered, the damage phase will begin. To accomplish this, begin by splitting your team up into 3 groups of 2 players each. There are 3 bases around this encounter: Spawn, Blue, and Orange, and each group of 2 players should start at one of these 3 bases. The Operator Vandal will appear at the Spawn base, the Scanner Vandal will appear at Blue base, and the Suppressor Vandal will appear at the Orange base. Each base also houses 2 chests for dunking the nukes. Our team chose to number them 1 through 6 clockwise around the arena, starting with the Spawn base. When the encounter begins, clear as many enemies as you can while Taniks floats around the space and tries to shoot you. Eventually, he will make his way over to one of the 3 bases. On each of his 4 shank boosters, there will be a glowing nuke. Your team should decide, preferably beforehand, which 2 boosters you are going to destroy first. This could be the front 2, the back 2, the left 2 only, it's up to you. Be careful while shooting at the boosters, as giant purple beams will start appearing all around you, and standing in them too long won't end well. Destroying a booster will drop a nuke core, which should be immediately picked up and ran to the correct chest. Like the last encounter, the scanner's job here will be to identify the 2 glowing yellow chests and call them out for the rest of the team. The operator in this encounter will have the job of destroying the detainment shields around a player that is transporting a nuke. When a player gets detained, you will have to shoot the glowing purple dots on the shield in order to break it and set the player inside free. If everyone knows what they're doing and is moving quickly towards the chest that the scanner called out, there is typically only around 2 shield breaks necessary before the player gets to the chest and can dunk the nuke. The suppressor's job will be the same as the previous encounter. When the nukes drop from Taniks, the suppressor drones will start glowing blue again. Each base has its own 3 drones, and the 3 drones that are closest to Taniks will become active once the nukes drop. The suppressor should get to the drones as quick as possible, but be careful not to complete the stun too quickly, as doing so could deactivate the operator's augment and make them unable to free the detained players. It's best if the suppressor waits until the second shield break before completing the stun. After the stun is completed and the nukes are dunked in the chest, a random augment will deactivate. The deactivated player should take their augment to a station and deposit it immediately for someone else to pick up. Because you need a total of 4 nukes dunked per phase, simply repeat what you just did with Taniks' remaining boosters, grabbing the other 2 nukes and having everyone complete their roll. Alternatively, you could break all 4 of Taniks' boosters at once and have 4 players carry the nukes instead of just 2. Depositing all 4 nukes at once like this will give you a greatly extended damage phase, allowing for a 1 phase of this boss. However, you won't have any teammates to pass the nukes to when running towards the chest, because Suppressor will be doing their role, Operator will be doing their role, and then the other 4 players will be carrying the nukes. When you break all 4 of Taniks' boosters, you can easily find which 4 chests to dunk at because they will always be the 4 chests at the bases that Taniks is not near. This means the scanner doesn't really have to worry about their role, and can focus on helping getting the cores to the chests. I would suggest starting with the 2 nuke cores for less experienced players, and then trying this strategy out when everybody is more comfortable with the mechanics. Depositing the final of the 4 required nukes leads us right into the damage phase, where Taniks will teleport to the middle of the map, and after a few seconds he will summon a spinning storm of debris, which you should avoid by jumping over it. Within this storm bubble will be 2 rings, an outer ring and an inner ring. You'll want to position yourself in the middle between both, as standing in the inner ring will pretty much instantly kill you, and standing on the outer ring will, well, get you a face full of debris. The damage phase is pretty long, but is interrupted by Taniks throwing you upwards and out of the damage area. Be careful not to jump when this happens, or you could be sent extremely high or far back. When he throws you out, just make sure to jump back in over the debris and continue your damage. Once damage ends, return to your sides, collect ammo, and prepare to repeat everything you just did. You get a total of 3 damage phases to defeat him, which means 12 total nukes dunked, before Taniks becomes enraged. Reaching the notch in Taniks' health bar and Taniks' enraged state both result in the same thing, him teleporting quickly from base to base while you chase him down and continue to damage him. You get somewhere around 5 teleports before Taniks just gets bored of you and wipes your entire team. So if your whole team can keep up a constant stream of enough damage during this enraged state or his final stand, you should be able to defeat Taniks the Abomination. To quickly summarize this encounter, split up into 3 groups of 2 players each, with each group taking a base. 1 player takes the Operator augment, 1 takes the Scanner augment, and 1 takes the Suppressor augment. When Taniks moves to a base, shoot 2 or 4 of his boosters to drop 2 or 4 nuke cores, and then deposit them in the correct chest that the scanner calls out. The Operator will break the shields trapping the players running with the cores. Make sure to have the Suppressor hold off completing the stun until the second break of the purple detainment shields. Then deposit the deactivated augment for someone else to pick up, then repeat that twice if you're doing 2 cores, once if you're doing 4, to begin the damage phase. The final chest is a little bit more complex than the usual raid chest we're all used to. On top of the normal loot, you have the option to purchase already owned raid gear for Spoils of Conquest, the raid currency. Or you can open crypt caches with Spoils of Conquest to get a chance in an item that you still need from the raid. You can choose to spend your spoils immediately or save them for a future run. But it's worth noting that you actually will hit a cap eventually if you keep hoarding them. I believe the max you can hold in your inventory is 240 spoils. You can also obtain spoils from other raids to use in this raid by completing encounters in Garden or Last Wish. And that should be about everything you need to know to complete every encounter in the Deep Stone Crypt Raid. Thank you very much for watching, and if this video was helpful, please let me know in the comments, and maybe consider giving it a thumbs up.